Hello, you're listening to the Mindset of Podcasting. In this podcast, we talk about all things podcasting, from setting it up, getting over those fears, and growing your podcast. I'm your host, Jillian, CEO of Jillian Grover Podcast Solutions. I've been helping women entrepreneurs start, manage, and grow their podcasts since 2020. Listen in as I give you all the tips and tricks I know about successfully launching and managing your podcasts. Let's go chat. Welcome back to the Mindset of Podcasting. I am so glad to be back. I had to take a few months off just to recharge myself and to just get into the right mind space because I experienced burnout really, really bad in my business this year. And so this month we are going to be talking about burnout, especially regarding your podcast. And, your podcast is part of your business. So business life, it all merges into one. So I wanted to start this episode by talking a little bit about my story with burnout that happened this year. And I know burnout is kind of a big buzzword. Everybody's using it, but I never really knew what it meant until I experienced it. Like, it's hard. It kind of put me in a depression. Like, I was ready to burn everything down, my business, everything, and to go get a job at Target. So I had to take a step back from things, and this podcast was one of them. And I'm really glad I did it. And it gave me new clarity. The ideas for this podcast started flowing again, and it really opened me up to new things in my business and in my podcast. So I really, really am a big advocate for taking breaks, and I'm going to let you know what happened over my break and how this all started. So I took on too much basically in my business. That is what happened. I took on too much. I wasn't making sure that my clients were aligned with me. I was just kind of taking them on because, I needed the money. We've all been there in our business. We've all needed the money. And so I wasn't really making sure the clients were a good fit. And that is something I'm not doing anymore because I found out taking on the wrong clients can put so much stress on you. And if you've a service-based business, even a coaching business, you've had those clients where you get that email, you get that notification from a box and you groan. So I knew I needed to take a step back. I was experiencing health problems because I was so stressed. The first thing I noticed was that my legs started getting really sore from sitting too much. I was sitting too much because I was working too much, and my legs started to get really, really painful. And I have a history of blood clots in my leg, and it was that same leg. So I ended up going to the emergency room to make sure it wasn't a clot, which thank goodness it wasn't. It was just I was sitting too long and my muscle was not liking that. So I ended up having to go to physical therapy to help with that because when I have stress in my body, it shows up physically. So I start getting physical pains. I start getting sicker more. I feel lethargic. I do get some depression. I did have depression at the beginning of this year where I just wanted to lay in bed all day and do nothing. I wasn't really active with my kids or wanting to go out and do things with my husband. And I just wasn't finding joy waking up every day, going to my business like I used to. I used to love getting up and going to work and working on podcasts, and that just stopped happening. And it was just because I had too much to do and I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I was taking on podcasts that weren't something I would personally listen to. And that was one of my values in my business was I want to work with people who I love listening to their podcasts. I would listen to their podcasts even if I didn't work on it. And so I had to take a step back and I ended up letting some clients go just so I can make space to bring in more aligned clients. And the thing is, when I ended up letting a few clients go, I got 3 discovery calls the very next week. And they were very aligned clients. 2 of them were. I ended up taking on 2 of them. I didn't take on 1 of them. 2 of them were very aligned clients. I was so excited to get to work on their podcast. So the thing is, when you get to that point where you are waking up and you're like, I don't want to do this. It's too much. You're working all the time. You feel stressed. You need to take a step back from something. And that's the point where I got to. So I said the first thing that I need to take a step back from was my podcast. Now, as a podcast manager, I always say that we need to be consistent. We need to keep up with our podcast. People need to know that we'll be there every week, but they also need to know that we're taking care of ourselves, that we're actual human beings that need to take a break sometimes. And it is okay to do that. And you know what? Taking a break from my podcast didn't burn my business down. It actually helped it. Because when I took a break I took a break. I announced I was ending the podcast, and I was just laying in my bed about 2 weeks later. And all of these ideas started flowing for the podcast, all of these things I wanted to do. I got out a notepad and pen and I wrote them all down because I gave myself time to actually be creative and let myself rest and think. And that is what I think is most important. When you give yourself that break, you are able to actually process things and your mind is actually able to be creative. So when you feel, I don't know what I want to call it, like the burnout coming, you're just feeling so stressed, so tired, not experiencing joy anymore in your days, because that was mine. I was not experiencing joy at all. Take a step back. Take a step back. Your business is not going to burn down if you need to take a little break. It's not, you know. I think your clients will be more thankful that you are human and that you are taking a time for yourself. When I put a post out saying, hey, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. I am taking a break from my podcast. People actually reached out and they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to hear this. I've been so stressed trying to keep up with mine. And you know what? Maybe a break would be good for me. So it's important. And then another thing I do want to talk about with burnout is the boundaries that we set. Now, I know boundaries is also a really big buzzword, but I had to establish some boundaries because I was working from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at night. And I didn't create this business so I could work like that. I didn't even work that much in my corporate job. So I needed to set some boundaries. So I said, hey, I pick up my kids at 3 o'clock every day. I'm not going to work after I pick them up. And now that baseball season has started, like practices at 4 p.m., I seriously cannot work after 3. So I was like, I am setting my work hours. These are my hours. I put those hours in my email signature. I let all my clients know these are my hours. You are welcome to email me, Voxer me outside of these hours, but just know I will probably not answer unless it's in those hours. And they were totally okay with that. A really good tip I have though is take those apps off your phone. I took Voxer and Slack off my phone. I turned off my notifications for my email. It's still on my phone, but I took out the notifications so that when I'm out and about and doing things with my kids, I'm not getting those notifications and checking work stuff. I am present with my kids because now my clients know, hey, it's after 3 p.m. You probably won't get an answer until tomorrow. Now, a little thing I do is sometimes I will look. I'll look at my email. I usually won't look at Voxer or Slack because they can see that I've read it, but I'll look at my email and, if it's something that I want to just get off my plate, it's after hours, but I've seen the email and I'm like, I'm just going to answer really quickly. I do answer it in the email, but then I schedule it to go out the next day between the hours of 9 and 3, which are my work hours. That way they know, hey, I'm really not answering emails after hours. Even though I am answering emails after hours, they're not going to get that email until the next day, knowing that those are my work hours. So that's just a little tip. So I know this was kind of an all over story because that was my life. I felt all over the place. I felt rushed. I felt like I wasn't doing my best work because I was rushed, because I was overworked and I was stressed and I was just done with everything. So taking a step back is definitely my number one tip. If you need that break, take that break. It is okay. Take the break. Give yourself time to relax, to recuperate, and find your passion again for your work, because that is what I did and that is what happened. I found my passion. Now, I didn't stop working altogether. Like I said, I did get let go of a few clients, but I kept the clients that I absolutely love working with, and I kept them, and I did work on their podcast during that break from my podcast. So I was doing work, but I didn't feel overloaded and overwhelmed. And now I've added people to my team to help me. So again, I don't feel overwhelmed, because I've also learned that while I would love to make more money and keep all the money I'm bringing into my business, just like anybody else, my time is so much more important. My time, my health, my mental health are so much more important. So I hired somebody to take on more because I don't want to ever feel like that again. So now I have them and they're ready to take on even more if I get more clients in, so that I am prepared. I am prepared and not overwhelmed like I was last time when I took on new clients. So today I wanted to give you my 3 tips for not getting burnt out with your podcast. Besides taking a break, taking a break is definitely a great tip. But if you are currently recording your podcast, starting your podcast, I want to give you 3 tips so that we don't get to that burnout stage where you have to take a break. So my number 1 tip, batch record. Take a day and create all your podcasts in one day. That's actually what I'm doing today. I am recording 3 podcast episodes. And then later this month, I do have a guest interview where I will just be recording that one podcast that day. But I'm recording the 3 of them for this month today so that they're all done and they're off my calendar. And then I'm sending them over to my editor. So that will be done. Now, if you edit your podcast yourself or something, maybe you can do everything in one day or batch record in one day, edit it all in one day, write the show notes, things like that. But make sure that you're putting it in your calendar, because if you don't, you're going to forget. And all of a sudden it's going to be the night before and you're like, I don't have a podcast episode to go out. And we definitely don't want that stress. So definitely schedule them. Beginning of every month, I make sure that is in the calendar that I am recording. Number 2 is interview guests that you actually want to interview. You do not have to interview everybody that reaches out to you. And I did that. If you listen to the first 2 seasons of this podcast, I was interviewing everybody who reached out to me, even though some of them had no podcast, they didn't have anything to do with podcasting. It made no sense, but I felt like I couldn't say no to people. So now I actually do say no to people. If people reach out, I'm like, hey, it's not aligned at this time, maybe later on or something. I just kind of make it nice, even though I will probably not reach out later. Just to be honest, but I'm just like, hey, it's not aligned at this time. Thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate it. Just interview people who you actually want to interview and who have something of value to give your listeners. Because I wasn't doing that and I was getting burnt out with the number of interviews I was doing. I was doing so many interviews. That's another thing. Like, you don't have to do a ton of interviews. You can choose how many guests you want on. And I've decided that 1 a month is good for me. Like, otherwise, doing more than 1 interview a month, like, burns me out. So 1 interview a month is my limit. So you know what? Do what feels right for you. If you love interviewing people, then have every episode be a guest, but just make sure that they align. And the last thing, and probably the most important thing, is to make it fun. Make your podcast fun again. We get so into, I have to do this with my podcast, or you see somebody else doing something like, I want to do that. You know what? Take a step back. What feels fun for you? What do you want to do with your podcast? And that is what I'm doing this season. So I love to read. So I'm having book reviews on about the topic I'm talking about this month. I love movies. So I'm actually doing some movie reviews of the podcast topics I'm talking about this month. So for example, this month, I'm going to be reviewing Do Less by Kate Northrup, which is all about doing less so you don't burn yourself out. And then I'm also doing a movie review of Office Space, which I think is the ultimate burnout movie. So those are coming up and I'm really excited about them. Like, it's just fun. I want to do a few fun things, but also while giving you value. And all of those things I am doing are going to give you value. After we review the movie, I'm going to tell you my biggest takeaways and how they can help you. So just do what feels fun for you. Like, life is meant to be enjoyed. And I wasn't enjoying it before. And now I'm looking forward to recording these episodes and just having fun with it. So please have fun with your podcast. So I want to give you a few other podcast recommendations if you're looking for some more episodes on burnout and how you avoid it or get through it. So a great podcast episode that I love about burnout, it's from the podcast Rated E for Erica. I absolutely love her. She is a confidence and sex coach, but her podcasts are amazing and I love her. She just gives it to you straight. And she has a great episode about preventing burnout. And another one I liked is from the podcast Call Her Daddy, and it's how to manage your stress and prevent burnout. And that was a great episode too. So for me, I took a break from podcasting because it just wasn't fun anymore. And it didn't feel like it aligned with me. But now I'm coming back and I'm planning on having more fun with the podcast. I'm planning on putting more life of it in it, more stories about my life and business, and just things that I think that you guys will find interesting. If you have a topic you want me to talk about, please DM me over on Instagram. I'm at Jillian Grover Podcast Solutions. Send me an email, jillian@jilliangrover.com. And I would love to do a topic on something you're interested in, because each month is going to be a different focus. And so for the month of June, we are focusing on burnout. So I'm going to be having a guest come on who's going to give us a ton of productivity tips to help us avoid burnout. Like, she makes it so easy. I love her method. She's amazing. And I'm going to have next week is my book review for Do Less. And I'm also going to have a movie review the week after that of The Office Space, like I mentioned. And a few topics that are coming up is in July, we're going to be doing how to use your podcast as a marketing tool. So there's plenty of podcast stuff in here too. And I am relating every episode back to your podcast. So don't worry about that. I'm also going to be doing, in August, we're going to be talking about using the power of your voice, how your voice can help you get what you want out of life and can help you elevate your business and your podcast. September, we're going to be talking about goal setting, because I think September is it's like a new year for me because school starts, it feels all new, and I love setting goals. So we're going to be talking about that. October is going to be about video podcasting. November is about taking breaks, because with the holidays coming up, we're going to be talking about taking breaks. So I have a lot of fun things coming up, and I'm so excited. So thank you so much for being here today. I hope that this helped you a little bit with avoiding burnout, knowing what you need to do in your business. Taking a break is okay, getting time to think and clarity around what you really want, and just making your podcast what you really want it to be. Batch recording, having fun with it, and making sure you are having guests on that align with you. So I will see you back here next week for my Book Before Undo Less, and thanks for listening.